So good morning again. Most of you are probably looking for Neil Finelli, and you're probably reaching the conclusion that I'm not Neil Finelli. And I say that for lots of reasons. But because of the bylaws of the trust, Neil's ability to be the chairman was limited. And so there was a vote, and guess who won the vote? There was only one candidate, so that was me. So my name's Mark Murray. I'm with the Montgomery School, and I am the chair of the PAISBIG consortium. So,
Mark, thank you.
I thought I was getting heckled already. I was kind of nervous. So, in the interest of being brief, what I was hoping to do is just do an overview of how this all works and just sort of a quick refresher. And really, I think it would take an hour and a half, and I know the hour and a half joke is old and nobody wants to be here probably 5 more minutes. I know you're all interested in your dividend check. But just to kind of a high-level refresher is that this trust is a collection of, I think, 44 schools. The trust is sort of, this program has been in existence for 17 years. There are $3.5 million in premiums. And so, and then there's the most important component, which is the dividend program. And sometimes that's sort of wishy-washy in people's minds. The dividend program is a shared methodology to control cost and share the benefits of doing that. So what happens is that the insurers would give you a certain premium, and then they're going to stop because they don't want to lose money. And the dividend program allows for the sharing of information, education, and this was a perfect example of how to be proactive in terms of managing risk, controlling costs, and reducing premiums. And what that does, of course, gives the insurance carriers the ability to share some of the success of managing your risk. And so that's the overall arching effectiveness of the program. But again, the key component is the collective group. So I kind of look at it as one for all and all for one. So the sort of three musketeer fact that you guys are participating is a wonderful thing. So I don't want to spend too much time preaching to you, but that is really the key ingredient of the success of the program. There's just a bigger pool to share bigger risk, and the ability to communicate education to a broad audience to generate significant savings. So, and then the other benefit, which sometimes people fail to think about, is that on your own, you're sort of a small fish in a big pond, but collectively we sort of swim as a school, and so it allows us to do great things that individually you probably could do for a while until a big shark comes, or you have a super huge claim and then you're not insurable, or you're insurable at an extremely high premium rate. So again, just things to sort of remember as we move forward. So, and I look at this sort of the organizational structure, so I'm learning, but I think that I've gotten some of the sort of underpinnings to how this all works. And so there's really sort of 4 pillars to this program. And so one of the pillars, and they're all important and all of equal importance, so in no significant order, but one of the pillars is actually the board. And so the board is comprised of Neil Finelli, and I want to thank Neil. He's not here today, but he's been instrumental in still staying involved and being a coach and a mentor to me in this new role. So there's Neil Finelli, Don Silverson, we have Steve Feld, and then Bob Mueller. He may have left, and oh, sorry, he moved into my chair. Okay, and we have Emily Miller, and I think that is it. I know you're busy, but he's awesome to have on any board that you're on. But if you guys could just give them a round of applause, because they spent a lot of time really making sure this is all good. So. And I just want to express my gratitude because they're fantastic. So the next sort of pillar of this organizational structure is Willis. And Willis is a fantastic collection of intellectual capital, just great people. They're fantastic in what they do, how they contribute to the process. And Hall, Reed, Mary, Bob, Jamie, other folks are here. Could we give them a round of applause, because I just know personally, not as a trustee, but just as a school that needs support, they are so responsive, so reactive, and they actually give fantastic advice and just super customer service that I can't imagine other providers doing. But and this year they really knocked it out of the park. And as we go through the presentation, you'll see some of the challenges and some of the climate as far as the schools and the risk management, and you'll see some fantastic results that we get. So they really are fantastic to work with, and again, I think they hit a home run this year. So thank you, and a special thank you to Hall, because I know he's worked very hard in achieving some of these results, as I'm sure everyone else has. And then the next pillar is, and I think a lot of people don't really understand this pillar or know of its existence, but it's capital advisors. So we have Rick Hinckley and Frank McNamee, and these guys are gentlemen, but they're scholars as well. And so what they are is independent consultants that are engaged by the board to provide information relative to the insurance climate, the risk climate, and they sort of vet our relationships as far as where we end up. And so it's an independent process that happens. So if you as an individual school thought, well, I'll engage with a broker, you're basically ultimately having to trust that broker. And it's not an indictment of Willis, it's just good governance as far as making sure that we all get the best result. And so they're instrumental in doing that. And then the last pillar is Utica. So Utica, we just witnessed a fantastic presentation from Dr. Moore, and thank you, I learned a bunch, and now I'm a little bit scared actually as to what we have to do, but it's better to be armed with knowledge than to find out the hard way. But we actually are at a point now where the president of Utica comes down a few times a year, and we're negotiating with them. So imagine that you're dealing with an insurance company. Doubtful that as an individual school you'll be communicating directly with the president. And so what that means is, first of all, we have a clear voice. But secondly, they certainly understand the significance of our group. And of course, their greatest attribute, the great customer service and all that, and fantastic premium and dividend program. But what they also do is they understand the school marketplace, and they understand the risks that we're facing and the risks that are growing and what's imminent into the future. And again, as we go through the presentation, we'll hear and see really what the horizon looks like. So, and if we could just give them a round of applause, because they've committed a lot of resources to us. So thank you. So I think we are ready to go. So we had the presentation of school safety, and so now we're up for the dividend award. So Steve, thank you.
So hi folks, I'm Steve Feld. I'm the Director of Finance at Solebury School up in New Hope. And if I can figure out how to move this, there we go. So last year I had the privilege of presenting this slide also. You notice that too many years teaching. Last year, I got to stand up here and talk about 2 years in a row of in excess of 30% dividends. Everybody cheered. I was a hero, even though I didn't do any of it. This year, you'll notice that the dividend is a little bit down. But what I really want to point out to you is that if you look at all 20 data points, about 70% of the time, the dividend has been in excess of 10%. 35% of the time, it's been in excess of 20%. And only 3 of those data elements are 0, meaning over this span of time, we as a group have seen a dividend almost every single year. And on average, the package dividend has been just in excess of 16%. The workers' comp dividend has been just in excess of 15%. So there's a financial component to this that's attractive. But I think far more important is that if we look at what we get out of this program, the dividend program, that is not reflected in the dividend itself. So the protection against the adverse impact of large claims, part of this is just the nature of a group. We get to spread the risk out among the group. The impact of a large claim is going to be shared in a way. So, we actually have I think 2 schools last year that had loss experience greater than 100%. and yet their premium results are going to be the same as our group, their dividend results are going to be the same as our group, they still have coverage. Whereas in many situations, if they'd been out there by themselves, the coverage either would have been dropped or the premium would have been increased dramatically. But I think the other piece of this is not just the fact that it's spread out over a group, but that because of the dividend program, we have a strong motivation to be focused on risk management. I mean, this is one of the things that comes out of the program that Joe and Don help us with. That focus on risk management means that we're paying attention all the time as individual schools and as a group to ways that we can lower that risk exposure, and that then gives us some protection against the adverse impact of individual situations that happen. I already talked about premium stability. Mark alluded to this idea of expertly crafted, comprehensive coverage of risk. I think that expertise comes not from those of us on the board. I've learned more about insurance by serving on the board than I have contributed. And for those of you out there who, like me, are not insurance experts, we benefit dramatically from this team of people that has come to bring their expertise to bear. And it includes Utica and their focus on risk management and their commitment to it through people like Don and Joe, through the provision of the Safe Schools program that we all have access to in the group for free. It comes from Willis and their commitment to the dividend program that we have and their understanding of insurance. It comes from Capital Advisors and the expertise that they can bring to bear. And then it comes from you as individual members of the group. So that we have a whole bunch of people who know what they're doing, which means that my lack of expertise in insurance is not a negative for Solbury School. And then last but certainly not least, that same expertise helps us in terms of best practice when it comes to risk management. And I know that our experience with Utica has been that if we need help, Don or Joe are there. So I would encourage you also to reach out to them if you would like to aim at better best practices, or you feel like there's a gap in how you're pursuing some particular aspect of safety at your school. They do things not only like bringing Mr. Moore here to help us learn, but coming to campus to help you with things specific to your school. That's the dividend program. Any questions about it? Thank you very much. Mark? Oh, Bob.
Just one, underline one thing that you said. I've been with the group from the beginning, and during the course of time that we've had this program together, we've had a couple of incredible losses, where one was close to $20 million, another one was over $30 million. And in both cases, what the situation was is the student had been put in a wheelchair for life. What happened. And we were lucky that those schools had enough insurance to cover the future needs of these children. Okay, it was wonderful for the school. It was certainly a good thing for the families and the individuals involved. And just to underline your first point, those schools were not thrown out of the group. They did not get massive premium increases based on their experience alone. And within 2 or 3 years, after we rebuilt the coffers, they participated in the dividend program according to their premium contribution, not according to their experience. Mm-hmm. But the main thing is the risks were covered. We're not in this to get dividends. What we're in this for is to protect our schools and all the people connected with them, protect them from these incredibly awful things that could happen to any one of us without there being great lapses in anything. These are the kinds of accidents that can happen. That's the real incredible value of this group and why
That's right.
you want to join it and why you want to stand it.
That's right. Thank you, Bob. Frank?
Thank you.
One of the things we provide at the request of the PAISBIG board is some objectivity about what's going on in the marketplace as specific to rates, pricing. And so what we're sharing with you here is information we share with them periodically, that PAISBIG board. And what we have done is we have tracked rates within the insurance industry, commercial insurance, over a prolonged period of time. And this graph will show you that overall competitive forces in the marketplace have continued to pressure insurance companies to reduce their pricing. And in fact, many times now you'll see some merging of large companies as a result of that. Most recently, Ace and Chubb merged together. So some of the factors we look at in terms of current financial results, the industry has had relatively good results. There have been some catastrophes, none of which are very substantial, earthquakes, things of that magnitude, which require large immediate cash calls. So the industry's been fortunate for that reason. That has also put the insurance industry in profitable positions.
Sorry,
That's all right.
Dr. Moore forgot this.
I apologize, I left my phone up there.
No problem.
It wasn't recorded.
The other is investment results. Over the past few years, as everyone knows, interest rates have been very low. Most insurance companies, their investment portfolios are considered bonds versus equities. Those rates continue to be low. That has put pressure on underwriting results because there's less monies available through investment to bring to the bottom line. So there's been some pressure on underwriting companies to do a much thorougher job of risk selection, risk evaluation. Profitability, as I mentioned, there has been a lack of huge catastrophes in the industry over the past several years, and that's been reflected in good results by the part of many insurance companies, and that's a positive for them in their ability to be competitive and, as a result of that, keep rates from going up. Capital positions, there's always an appetite to look for good investment strategies. So in the reinsurance world, considerable amounts of capital continue to come in Bermuda, in Ireland, in offshore locations. That provides additional monies to companies so that they can peel off, if you will, some of their risk to that insurance market. And that's that particular opportunity that you as insureds benefit from. Pricing trends. Some reserves have been released by insurance companies to bolster up their returns at the end of the year, and that's been reflective in their annual results. Capital. Reinsurance companies continue to strengthen their reserves. Additional capital's coming in from investment markets. Softening market, as you can see, is the consequence of some of these factors. Specific to PAISBIG, we were asked to look at and trend both the package and workers' comp. This slide shows PAISBIG benchmarked against your industry, schools more specifically. And as John had spoken, your industry, your particular slice of the insurance world continues to have increasing levels of risk because of some of the factors that John was talking about. PACE, because of its safety programs, because of its rigorous criteria, has done very well. And the blue line shows the comparison against the red line of what has happened with the PAISBIG schools in total in the program versus the industry at large. And that's tracked from 2010 through 2017. Now, how long that will continue, I can't say. But the good news is that as a result of this program, the group has had good results in that area. As respects workers' compensation, again, same trend. You can see how on the comp, the benchmark is going up. There's been a slight turn upward for the PAISBIG group, but as you can see on the left-hand column, the differential and percentage has been substantial over the years to the benefit of the program and to the individual members. So unless there's any questions, I'd like to turn it over now to Neil, excuse me, Reed at Willis.
That's all right.
Thank you very much.
Before I do get started, Tracy and Beth and Linda also work at Willis and earlier didn't get recognized. So please, when you have the opportunity afterwards, stop by and say hello. I think it was 1883 that they came up with standardized time. And before 1883, everybody kind of worked on their own timeline. See you afternoon, see you around dusk, see you at dinner, whatever time that may be. But I will try to keep my comments brief because I know you're in a hurry. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the types of loss trends and issues that we're starting to see and have been seeing, because I think we need to get your focus and attention on it. Concussions. I know that many of you have some sort of concussion awareness program. Many times it's focused on the sports. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the sports arena. We see a lot of concussions happening on the playground. We see some happening in the dorm rooms. We used to think of it associated with football. In fact, I think our worst concussion was a girl playing soccer, going up her head ball. So I want to bring your attention that you need some sort of concussion awareness program, impact awareness, that's going to help us and help you protect your students. Abuse and molestation. I can't tell you how many situations we've had in the last couple of years, in general, for schools, with regards to abuse and molestation. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical activity. I mean, it might be a picture, it might be a suggestion, it might be something that's said to someone. But we're seeing it more and more, and the problem becomes that the statute of limitations with regards to abuse has been extended. So what we once thought was a situation that happened and they had from 18 to 20 to bring a result or bring it out and bring it forward, then went to 30 because it was 10 years extended beyond that. I most recently heard that it's been extended to age 50. All right, that's a big concern. The problem is that, you know, when a claim happens and it comes out 10 or 15 years from now, we want to make sure that the carrier, not only was the carrier viable today, because they're the ones going to, you know, the ones that was on it back then is going to pay today, but you also need to be keeping your records. We try to hold on to your policy information for a number of years, but it's key that you know who your carriers were some time ago in case those come up. So I just point out, keep some sort of documentation, whether or not it's the schedules, the physical policies, et cetera. Bullying, hazing, I think, you know, we might have talked a little bit about it today, but it becomes very apparent with the electronic devices. And we want to make sure that we've got some sort of an awareness program that students feel comfortable in bringing it forward to individuals. We have discussions in age-appropriate content with them. Severe weather, we've had a lot of property claims this last this last winter and fall. We had some hail damage to a number of schools. We've had a lot of buildings that had freeze-ups and frozen pipes this year. So the only reason I point out is that many schools are on some sort of energy management system. They shut back the power on or the heat or whatever it may be on the weekends. And when we see some of those really cold temperatures coming, we want to make sure that we're managing that energy system so they're not scaling it back. We end up with frozen pipes, water damage. Some of the developing trends, we've heard recently concerns that artificial turf and the little particles in there may be causing or the potential cause of cancer. We really haven't found anything supporting that yet. We're still evaluating it, but there's a lot of people that are concerned about that. To bring your own device, you know, I get very concerned about people that are schools, and we're all doing it, but there's some concerns, and I'll tell you in a minute, that bring your own device, the computer, the laptop, the telephone. Because number one, they're all capable of taking pictures. They all go into the locker room. They all may be in a dorm room. We're seeing a lot of situations with sexting. Most recently in TE School District, you know, it was in the paper, 11th grade? I'm sorry, 11-year-olds to 15-year-olds. It's a problem. Now, I've asked a number of schools how they deal with it, and they say, well, we teach. Rather than prevent, we try to teach and educate the children what's appropriate. I simply bring it out because you need to be aware of it. And we need to be aware of what we've got posted in the locker room so that it's inappropriate to have it out, have it on, or whatever it may be. Data breaches are of a concern. I know that we're all looking at network security. We've seen it in the news. It's happening at schools, but it just doesn't necessarily have to happen on the computer. It can be paper. We have all got file cabinets in the basement somewhere locked up with records. You need to make sure you've got those secured. And the last thing I want to talk about real quickly is drones. Got a lot of questions about drones. Can we have a drone? Can we have it watching our marching or our band or the games or whatever it may be? Currently, Utica redefines the definition of an aircraft. And the intent way back when was to provide coverage for the model rocketry clubs. But their policy actually will provide coverage for a drone. Now, it's being evaluated. There are some guidelines. If you've got drones or somebody wants to use a drone, by all means, reach out to us because we have some guidelines for you. Not to suggest that we'll continue to have coverage into the future, but the way the policy was written a number of years ago will automatically extend to that. And the last thing I want to mention is with regards to the underwriting process. I think when we start looking at the types of claims that we've had the last few years, whether or not it's concussions or bullying or molestation or the drones for that matter, we're going to get a little bit more inquisitive as to what types of preventive measures you have in place so that we can try to control the loss or, if nothing else, give you some guidelines that might help you in that process. Mark, thank you.
So I don't know about you, but that's a pretty intimidating slide in terms of things that possibly could keep us awake at night. But, and again, I know we're in sort of everyone's in a hurry, but I just want to go back for a second and just sort of revisit kind of visually the trends that we're facing. So schools are facing higher risks, and so, and of course, these are the risks, and I think we've all witnessed some of these events directly or indirectly. And so now here we are at renewal. So just go right to the punchline. Our rates are flat, which is pretty amazing given the changing in the landscape as far as increasing risks and the magnitude of those risks. So that's a pretty fantastic result. So the flat is for the package, GLPL, general liability, and then the workers' compensation. The directors and officers, that's flat, and then there's some changes. So the risks are sort of starting to materialize in terms of the actual underwriting willingness of the insurance providers. So to make sure, in the area of directors and officers, there's going to be a sports participation exclusion under the directors and officers policy, but those types of claims should still be covered under the general liability. So you can sort of see a modification there. And then another risk that is being changed in a way would be the security and privacy endorsement. So that's third-party claims for data breach, which are more and more in the news, and certainly depending upon your specific security measures for your school, it may be something that you'll want to consider. So what's happening there is that the current policy limit, so for the fiscal year that we're in, which will end in February, the policy limit's $1 million, and then the new policy will only be $100,000. So in terms of your renewal, you'll want to understand what your risks are, and if you need to buy up some more insurance relative to that. But it's important to certainly revisit your risk and your exposure as far as your data and confidentiality, and then understand where you are and maybe what exposure you have or how well you've mitigated that exposure. So, and then the next area would be the student accident. Again, that's flat, and there's a relatively minor change, but the policies have a limit of $1 million. But for in the 16-17 year for volunteers, that limit will be capped at $25,000. So you can see again that that's a significant change. My experience has only been using that policy for students, and there's only a handful of events that where I've had to use that. So that kind of covers where we are as far as the renewals. And I'm sure most of you have had visits or will have visits from Willis to sort of go into more in depth relative to this and sort of give you an understanding of what your options are and where you should be and where you will be relative to your program for next year. So two things, and I think we're ready to wrap up. One is if anyone would love to be on the board, we would love to have you. So it really is a fun opportunity. It's a way to learn a bunch. Really, really fantastic people. And we meet 4 or 5 times a year for an hour and a half. And lately we've been having really good lunches, so it's kind of, that might be worth it just in of itself. And then secondly, if some of you are here that are not part of the program, if you have questions or you'd like to maybe have more of an in-depth conversation as to the minutiae and how it really works and how you may be able to benefit from it, certainly I'd be happy to sit down and chat with you. Any of the folks that are trustees, Willis, of course, would be happy to do that, and we would love to have you as part of our group, and it's a win-win. The more we have in our group, the more benefit there is, and the bigger the pool to spread all the risks. So I think we're at the point of you guys get your checks and you can leave. So thank you all for your attendance, and again, I'd like to just thank everyone that participates in this. Have a safe trip back.